Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
It's Monday, which means another edition of your favorite show out there, Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin. Mike, I haven't done this with you in a few weeks.
Yeah, you were off in somewhere like North Carolina,
Chapel Hill.
and then Omaha, and then you went off to Weirdoville. I don't know where you live. Did you go back to Florida?
No, I was hanging out with my family. They came to Fayetteville.
I met your dad.
You met my dad and my mom, exactly.
Yeah,
so good people.
That was cool.
Yeah, but now.
And all of you just hung out here for
a
week?
We love Arkansas.
Did you go tour places?
We did. We went hiking. We went around. They got to see Razorback Stadium. They got to see Bud Walton.
What did your dad think of Bud Walton?
Oh, he loved it. He loved it. Said one of the best places.
He needs to come back here for a game, like a big game.
Well, that may be tough because he has his season during that time. Basketball season tends to run the same for college teams.
That's
but
right.
We'll see if he can ever get to see a game there. But we have to get into the questions this week. We have a lot of good ones. Our first one is from Eddie Lynn, who asks, what are the chances of both Connor Nolan and Robert Moore coming back? I guess Moore is the surprise unnamed player you mentioned a couple of weeks ago who may return.
Yeah, Dave Van Horn sort of revealed this last week in a press conference. Let's start with Connor Nolan. I think there's at least a reasonable chance he could come back. I still think he probably will go, but I think the decision, and the word we got was he went on vacation with his parents and they're just talking about it.
Correct.
What he's got to weigh is, okay, and all of it's going to boil down to their draft position, and we can't know that until the draft, which is what, 2 weeks away, 10 days, whatever it is, All-Star break. So you got that, and then I don't think they'll wait all the way to the end to negotiate numbers, but the draft position will give them a good idea of what numbers they could get money-wise. So with Connor, I think he has to look at, okay, I had a good year going, then everything went bad the second half, and then I bounced back in the sort of after the SEC tournament, all through the regional, super regional, pitched really well at Omaha. Would I be in a better position at maybe coming back as my second full year as the Friday starter? Because he's going to have name recognition more next year because he's been the Friday guy already. So his name is out there. Could he go through an entire season and keep those, do what he did in Omaha, do what he did in Chapel Hill, do what he did in Stillwater, do that all year long? And if he could do all that, probably he would be in a little bit better position, but then he's a sixth-year guy and he's out of options at that point. So what do they have to give him, you know? Maybe if he really improved a lot and after 2 years they could see, yeah, this guy's had 2 years of pretty good baseball, good numbers, and he could have an amazing, sixth year.
Yeah.
So if he thinks all of that could happen, then maybe he comes back, and then we all know that he's from Greenwood and he's all Razorback.
Right.
Had to be fun. I mean, it's one thing to be on the team and to go to Omaha a couple of years, and then last year, of course, they didn't. But to get to go back and be the number one guy in a regional, number one guy in a super regional, number one guy in a College World Series, got to pitch twice in Omaha. When you do that, that's a lot of fun. That's like different from the regular season. So all of that's got to be weighing on his mind, and I think there's at least a chance. Robert Moore, the only reason he would come back is if his numbers dropped off somewhere from like 278 or something, batting average to like 240 or whatever it ended up being. And his home runs really dropped off a lot. But he really came back in the regional, super regional, College World Series. There's no question about his defense. In fact, he was amazing. He got a lot of publicity in the postseason for his defense. So that alone probably makes him a pretty good draft choice. Would he improve himself coming back and taking away you always supposedly have this advantage if you come out, after your junior year and give up your senior year. Now you're out of options at the end of your senior year, although with COVID, he could theoretically say, well, if you don't give me the money I want, I'll come back for a sixth year.
Right.
So that's all possible. But I think if he hadn't bounced back the way he did in Stillwater, in Chapel Hill, in Omaha, then maybe he would tend to come back. But I think in the end, his draft numbers are going to be such, and his dad knows a lot about this as being the GM of a major league team. I could be totally shocked, but I think in the end he's not coming back.
So
That's just a
Connor,
guess.
so Connor, a little bit of a chance.
Well, more than a little bit.
Okay,
I'd say
okay.
45%.
Okay, 45%. I like the chances. 45%. That's not bad.
Robert
It's almost
Moore's
half.
more like 10%.
Okay, all right. So
Maybe.
don't put all
I'd
your
have
eggs
to be in his head to know for sure, but that's my best guess.
I like it. I like it. Well, let's move on. Hud Wyndham says, last week you said DVH was mostly going the JUCO route to fill holes in his lineup for next season, but you also said there might be some more additions still to come out of the portal. Any new names pop up?
Yeah, there were 3. One last week and then 2 more over the weekend, so we're going to take a look at those guys, and this will give you an idea. This is Jordan Sprinkle, UC Santa Barbara transfer. He's a shortstop. He's one of the reasons why I think Robert Bourne might not be coming back, because this guy could come in and really be a good shortstop for Arkansas. He hit .286 with 11 doubles, 4 triples, 3 home runs, and 35 RBIs this past year. Stole 25 bases and walked 31 times while striking out 46 times. Those numbers don't jump out at you, but he was a .340 hitter with 7 home runs in 2021, and I think Dave Van Horn believes those numbers will jump back up, maybe even above where they were in 2021, after he makes a culture change to Arkansas. Again, it makes a difference when you're on a winning team that's playing big time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, from UC Santa Barbara.
It's a hard name, I know.
No, keep trying to say UT for some reason. I hate that. From there to playing in an SEC venue every weekend, playing in front of these huge crowds, playing in the kind of regional supers that you have a chance to get into, maybe going to Omaha. You know, I'm sure he's thinking, man, my numbers could really jump up with extra motivation. So the only thing you have to worry about him is he's draft eligible. And he could get drafted high enough to go ahead and leave. But the thing is, his mom has been all over Twitter talking about how excited they are. So it looks like maybe.
That's good. That bodes well.
We're talking him. All right, let's go to Kansas. This is a transfer out of Kansas. It's another shortstop, Tavian Hosenberger.
It's definitely Josenberger.
So
I've heard it said Josenberger a few times.
Okay. He's probably going to be moved to the outfield. Here's the thing. He was the Jayhawks' leadoff hitter, and he had a 23-game on-base streak at one point in 2022.
Wow.
And he's also a switch hitter.
Oh, nice.
So no matter where they go at you with a lefty or right-handed hitter, he apparently bats pretty similar numbers on either side of the plate. That's the big advantage of this guy.
Nice.
So he's another guy that when you look at his 2021 numbers as opposed to his 2022 numbers, they went up.
Yeah.
So that's another guy where you're thinking, okay, you put him in a better situation. Kansas, come on. You know, you're going to go into the postseason. You're going to be in some big games. You're going to play in big SEC games. You're going to play in Baum Stadium in front of 8, 9, 10, 11,000. And again, he's probably thinking, I think Dave Van Horn is thinking, those numbers will go back up more toward what we think he can do, which is a plus 300 hitter.
Yeah.
And another guy with experience that you bring in out of the portal. And then finally, a left-handed pitcher, Julian Bosnick. He committed out of the portal from South Carolina. Now, he had a really good 2021 season, drafted 16th round of the Major League Draft, had 78 strikeouts in 50 innings, and opponents batted just 133 against him. Thing is, he sat out last year with surgery to his elbow, I think.
Yeah, it was an elbow strain.
Yeah, so that's why he didn't pitch last year. But again, you're looking at those numbers from 2 years ago and thinking, if he's fine now, and he's a big, tall, left-handed hitter. We looked at video of him. He looks a lot like Hagen Smith, 6'3", left-handed guy, gets a lot of strikeouts. So this could be an extra guy in the rotation. You might be able to move Wiggins into kind of a middle innings bullpen guy to come in and give you 2 innings, 3. We've all seen Wiggins, when he can control his fastball, he's unbelievable. Well, you bring him in for 2 or 3 innings, and maybe he's going to be tremendously effective. Then you could have these 2 lefty starters along with Connor Nolan. So all of that looks good for next year. I don't know if that's the way it'll work out, but those are your 3 guys. And again, I think all 3 of them are guys that came in here to be a part of a big-time program.
For sure.
And then you can throw in NIL money too, because sometimes you get that. Dave Van Horn talked about that. That's an extra factor now in not only getting guys out of the portal, but also in keeping some of your guys from leaving, and also in keeping some of your signees, your freshman signees, from signing pro contracts as you get more NIL money available.
Right.
So,
And coming to Arkansas, it sets you up to get better NIL deals than maybe you were if you were at
right.
Kansas or UC Santa Barbara. So
I think that's the update on, and there may be more portal guys. He may
sure.
not be through, but early on it was a lot of JUCOs. Now we're going more portal.
Right, but he's a little annoyed at the draft being so late this year. So
hates it because it leaves him in limbo. Even these guys, they could all be gone. Then what do? You're having to sit there and sweat all of that.
Well, you have to
Plus,
start over.
Your 2022 class guys, you might lose 3 or 4 of them. So again, and then you're sitting there going, was Robert Moore coming back? Is Connor Nolan coming back? If I'm Dave Van Horn, man, my head is spinning right now. I'd like the draft to be over, and you know where you stand with all these guys.
And it should have already been over,
Sure.
but, you know,
It's
that's
terrible.
how it goes. So let's move on. Another baseball question, and this one is a good one. Mousetown says, so Matt Hobbs had a chance to go to LSU as a pitching coach and turned it down, and now Wes Johnson is leaving the Twins to take that job. Johnson may be the best pitching coach in baseball. LSU is going to use him to beat us. This is so wrong.
Yeah, that's pretty dramatic. But there are people, there's been that kind of reaction. Here's the reaction some people have had. Now, wait a minute. They're scratching their head and going, if Dave Van Horn knew that Wes Johnson was looking to come back last year and Matt Hobbs got this offer from LSU, why didn't he tell Matt Hobbs, hey, you need to take that job, it's big time, and then get Wes Johnson to come back? Well, here's the thing. Dave Van Horn pretty much answered that question. He said, look, I was really, really happy when he turned the job down. What that tells me is he likes me as his boss. He likes this school. His kids are here. They like living here. And he said, when you got an assistant coach like that does what he does, then you just love having him come back or turn down an offer like LSU and not leave. And also, I was looking on Facebook. And Connor Nolan's dad had a post on this because a bunch of the guys were doing what I'm talking about. They were like, "Ooh, what's going on here? How come we get Wes Johnson?" And he would be in a position to know since his son worked under Matt Hobbs. And he said, "You guys don't have any idea how good this guy is. All these people that are blaming him for this and this and this and that and that, he knows what he's doing. And you need to listen to Dave Van Horn when he explained why he was so glad that Matt Hobbs decided to stay 2 years ago, not this year, but had the chance before the start of the 2022 season to go to LSU.
Right.
Now, it is going to be interesting to see what Wes Johnson does. How much better does LSU get? Do they beat Arkansas? Ooh. So it could get interesting, but we'll see.
We'll see. Only time will tell. Danny DeVore on Facebook says, I thought it was crazy when the Big Ten stole 2 teams out of the Pac-12. Now suddenly teams are jumping conferences faster than I can count. It's nuts. Is there an end to this? I want to know too.
You know, there for a few days, it really looked like the whole thing was going to cave in. There were a lot of talk about the ACC, the SEC taking 5 or 6 out of the ACC, the Big 12 running up to the Pac-12 and grabbing off 5 or 6 teams. And you're thinking there's going to be a seismic earthquake here all at once.
Yeah.
And then the last few days, it's all calmed down. Now, that doesn't mean it's over. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter if it happens now or later. I believe that it is inevitable. I'm going to try to explain this because it's complicated.
Okay.
I think it's inevitable that a new top division of baseball is going to be created, separate from the NCAA. Because these schools, these Power 5 schools, have reached a point where they need more money, and TV money is the way to go these days. For many, many years, you got most of your money in athletic departments from your live gate ticket sales and your donations. But the TV money is getting so big. What they're doing now is sitting around and going, how can it be bigger? Well, there's only one way the TV money is going to get bigger, and that is if you eliminate these so-called rent-a-win games. Right now, you have 4 non-conference games. If you're a Power 5 school, you got 4 non-conference games. So let's take Arkansas. Okay, we'll go play Louisiana Tech. Now, I won't use this year as an example, but in a typical year. We're going to go play Louisiana Tech. We're going to play Western Kentucky, blah, blah. We're going to play these teams. Those aren't big TV draws. And so what happens is Arkansas ends up with the 11 o'clock game on the SEC network, and the numbers aren't good. Okay, the idea is to eliminate those kind of games. You're not playing those anymore. If you're Arkansas, your non-conference games will be games against teams like Stanford, or it might be against Florida State, might be against Michigan. You know, it's going to rotate, but all of these games are going to be selected because of their TV potential, with the idea that we're going to really jump the TV viewing audience for college football on a Saturday. And so when you do all of that, you just create a new division with big-time games, and all of these schools get to share in the revenue. So what happens to the mid-majors? In football, they're going to have to have their own division. If I were them, I'd create my own playoff system, just like you have now with NAI and division. I don't pay attention to that stuff.
Right,
Division
right.
2, 1A, or whatever it is. They have their own playoff system. They could do that. Now, this will not apply, in my opinion, to other sports. I don't think you could make it work. I don't think you could eliminate mid-majors in basketball, because that means Duke is out.
Yeah.
How do you do that? So you wouldn't. I don't think you would eliminate it in baseball. There are some baseball programs that are not part of Power 5 schools that are really good. So I think a lot of the rest of college athletics will remain under the NCAA. College football, which really has been separate anyway, because their playoff system is their own. It's not the NCAA. So I think this, for football only, you're going to see a division of 64, maybe 72 teams that only play each other. And then you could have this, then you have to realign everything and make it work geographically. It looks nuts right now to have UCLA and USC going over and playing Rutgers or somebody. That's eventually going to go away when they realign all this stuff. And what I'm excited about, I may never live to see it, but you could have the old Southwest Conference recreated. It'll have a different name, but it might be Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, Missouri, TCU, Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, Houston, A&M, something like that, more geographically closer to each other, and eliminate Arkansas going all the way over and playing these teams far to the southeast that they really culturally don't have a lot in common with. I feel qualified to talk about this because I moved into this area from Texas, so I didn't have preconceived ideas about it. One of the reasons I liked it here, because I felt like I was still in kind of Texas, Oklahoma maybe. When you live here, it's not like living in Southeast Arkansas. When you're in Southeast Arkansas, you really are part of the South. This is not the South up here. It's different. So if you align them back with those old schools that they used to be with, and maybe throw in an Oklahoma and an Oklahoma State, which would be really close rivalries, I think the chances of doing all that stuff gets me excited.
Yeah.
You know, because I still believe with all this alignment, you've got to have teams geographically close to each other so fans can still hit the road and go to road games.
That's true.
It can't just be totally about TV. If it does, you're going to, 15 years from now, you're going to turn on your TV set and they're going to have a fake generated crowd in the stadium. You know what I'm saying? Like they do in these movies with all this, all these, what do they call
CGI?
it? CGI. They just create the crowds.
Yeah, they
and
could.
they're not really there, and that's nonsense. So
they could.
we've got to have live gate crowds too, and you do that by letting teams be rivals with teams that are close to them. Oklahoma State and Oklahoma would be great natural rivals for Arkansas.
They really would. They really would. So do you think a super conference could be possible? Because there's all that super conference, you know.
You may end up with super conferences like the SEC may have twice as many as they have now, but they're going to have to split it some way or another. Everybody can't play everybody. You don't have 40 games, so you can't do it that way. And that's what I think will happen. They'll eventually take the whole map and say, all right, let's have a big meeting and divide this all up. And that's where I think maybe you get this old Southwest Conference look. Come up with a new name for it, but it would be teams close to each other, and you get all these teams like Alabama and Auburn and maybe Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Florida, and teams that are closer together like that, and they all play each other.
Yeah,
and then
I think it's a great idea.
Maybe they'd get a new Pizza Hut in Gainesville.
Maybe they would get a new Pizza Hut in Gainesville, Mike. Maybe they would. All right, Arky Redneck says,
inside joke.
It is an inside joke. I keep hearing about how football recruiting is off the charts. Top 5 nationally, best in the SEC. But I read an internet article claiming that when the 2023 class is finally settled, Arkansas will be where it always is, top 30 nationally and 10th or below in the SEC. What is up with that?
Yeah, that's an exaggeration. It is better. It's going to be better.
Yeah.
I've talked to Otis about this. Nobody knows more about, he's been doing recruiting for Arkansas for like 35, 40 years, almost as long as I've been here. And he knows what he's talking about. I think they've got 7 4-stars. He thinks eventually they will end up with 12, maybe something like that. So that's about almost half your class is 4-stars. The main thing is they don't have any 2-stars that I know of, and then most of those 3-stars are pushing 4-star status.
They have like 13 3-stars right now that could be 4-stars.
Yeah. So he thinks it's naturally going to go down because Arkansas has gotten more commitments than most schools have. I just saw Alabama got a commitment today, and they're way behind in the rankings right now. They won't stay there. They're kind of taking their time and figuring out who they want, and if they don't get this guy, they can always go get another guy that's just as good. So Alabama's going to be up there eventually. Arkansas I think they're top 5 somewhere in there right now nationally, and last time I checked, number 1 in the SEC. They're not going to stay number 1 in the SEC. Tennessee is just killing people right now in the last 3 or 4 days. I think that's a result of the way they're doing NILs, but we'll see. But anyway, I think and Otis says this, when it's all said and done, this class will be somewhere around 5 or 6 in the SEC and in the top 20, which is an improvement. So he's getting there, and it gets better. Otis explained this to me, and everybody needs to listen to this. What happens to you when you're going through what we went through under Chad Morris, you sign a 4-star, he immediately becomes a 3-star because they disrespect the people that you have. So Sam Pittman's having to overcome that still. They've had 1 4-star already this year. When he committed to him, he dropped to a 3-star.
Yeah.
But that's going to stop as you have more success. They won 9 games last year. If they won 9 games this year or 10, that sort of starts going away.
Right.
So recruiting, I think, is going to continue to get better and better.
Well, like you said before, if they finish in the top 20, I think I told you this yesterday, I read a stat that said if they finish in the top 20 in recruiting, that's the first time they'll have done that in the last decade.
Yeah.
So that's
it's
pretty,
better.
that's a lot better than where it could be,
Sure.
So still continuing to get better. Edward Clutch wants to know, have you heard anything regarding a timeline of when we'll be able to buy replica football jerseys with the players' names on the back?
Here's what has to happen for a jersey to be sold with a player's name on the back.
Yeah.
That player has to sign an NIL deal. Now, I'm not sure whether they sign the NIL deal with the manufacturer of the jersey or the school in question. I'm not sure exactly how that works. What's going to end up happening is everybody's going to get a piece of the revenue. The company, right now it looks like there's only 2 companies that are going to make these jerseys. So it's either Nike and I forget the name of the second company, but they make them. Okay, they're going to get money off of selling this to the merchandising shops. Then the merchandising shops, whether it's the one at the U of A or whatever, they're going to sell it. They're going to make money off of it. And then I'm not sure whether the player would get a royalty fee or a percentage of the sales. I'm not sure how that works. But because of all of that, this has been a kind of complicated. To me, they're off to a slow start on this. Let me explain this. If you go back to the original NIL ruling by the Supreme Court, this is what they were getting at. They were saying colleges don't have a right to make money off the image and likeness of these players when they sell products. And that's what was happening with the NCAA. They were getting money from video game manufacturers in the mid-90s with having the image of these real players on their video games. And they got sued and they eventually lost. So to me, this is at the very heart of the Supreme Court ruling, which is, yes, this is what schools should be doing. They should be saying, wow, we're going to sell all this merchandise with these guys' names on the back, and we're going to all share in it. Everybody comes out on top. And yet here we are, I called, and so far, here's what it's boiled down to. Mary Half, Robert Moore, and Caden Wallace last spring. And they weren't even jerseys. They were kind of like T-shirts or something that was made to look like jerseys.
Yeah, they look like jerseys.
Yeah. That's where, and so I called over today and tried to ask, well, okay, who's next on the list? And they said, well, it's not finalized, so they weren't willing to give it to me. So there is going to be a new list of athletes. Be patient. You'll be able to buy this stuff. But the athlete himself has to say, yeah, I want to be a part of this NIL. Why wouldn't they? But they do have to sign the deal. And then they get part of it. The other thing is, and I talked to some people that sell this stuff, and it makes no sense to me. They say it's limited where you can buy these, where you're going to be able to buy these, like from Nike and the manufacturer, maybe offline, and then like from like the merchandising shop at Reynolds Razorback Stadium in the Broyle Center, and maybe one or two other places. To me, I'd let everybody sell it. I'd let Walmart sell it. I wouldn't care who sold it. If I want to make money for these athletes and money for the school, and if I'm Nike or whoever, I want to make money off this, why wouldn't you let anybody sell it? If you want to sell it, I'll sell it to you so that you can resell it.
Right.
But they're apparently being very selective about this, and I don't know why that is.
That's very
because
strange.
to me, this is a major way these athletes can make money, and it's legal. I like it. It's not boosters throwing money. These are just average fans going, yeah, I like that number. I want it. And they're contributing and helping the players, but they're getting something back. They're getting a jersey.
Yeah, because it's their name on the back
I
of
think
the
it's the way
shirt.
NIL should work.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, it's the best way for sure. Rob's 4516 says Burks was obviously a big part of the passing game last year, preventing defenses from concentrating solely on our run game with his absence. Do you feel the pieces are in place to allow that to happen this fall?
I saw a stat that said that KJ Jefferson had the best numbers in the country last year in passes over 30 yards, something like that.
Yeah.
In other words, the deep ball.
Oh, yeah.
There's no question that was Traylon Burks. He had that amazing ability to get behind, and he was so fast, and he fooled people, and we've run video highlights. I mean, the highlights reel from him last year is unbelievable. So do they have somebody like this? I don't think so. I watched in the spring. I don't think there's a guy like that at wide receiver. But they are going to have more options. So I think there's going to have to be an adjustment. You've got more targets, but you can't just pick one guy out and say he's going to beat Alabama. He can do this. So I hesitate to say that they're going to drop off a lot in their passing game because until you see, you're not going to know. We tried to watch this spring and kind of get a feel for it, and I just never did. Part of the problem was that spring, whatever it wasn't a spring game, but it was indoors, and you can't have a passing game indoors. It just doesn't work. So we didn't get a good look at how all these receivers look. They've got a lot of talent, more overall talent than they did have. They just don't have a Burks, in my opinion. So what's that going to translate to? Maybe one of these guys becomes him. Maybe there's going to be two guys like him. But right now, sitting here, I don't know. It's a big question mark in my mind. And one of the things I'm going to be looking at when football practices start and the season starts.
Yeah, and speaking of when football practice starts and the season starts, that's actually one of our next questions. But Tex Robinson on Facebook says, I used to live in the Texas Hill country. It was always a battle with UT and A&M fans trying to out-brag each other in the summers before football season started. Nice to know that nothing has changed. You're the expert on this. Which one is better at bragging? Ooh, I'm excited to know the answer to this.
Yeah, it's a different kind of bragging. When you talk about the Longhorns and the Aggies.
Well, someone's weird.
They're both delusional.
Kind of weird, yeah.
They're both delusional about they're always going to win the national championship this year. No matter what happened last year, we're going to win it all this year. Both fan bases are delusional. But it's different, because the Longhorn fans have the national media on their side convincing them of this. And there's no better example of this than what's going on right now. They were supposed to be really good last year, and they just fell off the face of the earth. But that didn't matter, because this year they're going to be good again. Read about this stuff. I mean, I'm telling you, read these magazines, get on the internet. Texas is back. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. Maybe they will. But they get help from the national media that is telling their own fans, hey, don't pay any attention to last year because you're really going to be good this year. Now let's go to the Aggies. They don't get help. National media doesn't like them. They got to do it on their own with their own media, but they have their own media. A&M's like a team in a bubble.
They blow bubbles too, right?
Yeah, they do blow bubbles and draw a circle around the Houston area and where all these Aggies are, and they've got their own media. And you've never been around the Aggie media.
No, I haven't.
Wait till you're around them, because they might as well work for the school They are cheerleaders, and their reports are, hey, I read this yesterday, and it says we might be in contention for the national championship this year. And you know what's going on at A&M this year because they beat Alabama. Pay no attention to the fact that you thudded after that, and were so far down in the West on the bowl picks that you didn't even go to a bowl because you were embarrassed by the bowl you got picked to go to. So you just said you had COVID and you didn't go anywhere. Forget all that. That doesn't matter anymore because this year we may win it all. We're going to go to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, and if you beat Alabama, you're getting to the national. And once we get into the playoffs, we're winning it all. They've been saying this stuff as long as I've been alive in the old Southwest Conference, now in the SEC. And so they generate this stuff all internally. They don't have anybody in the national media saying this. They say it themselves. And I guess if we sat around and talked about how good we were, and you might get a network job next week, you know,
yeah.
I could retire and have a millionaire give me a stipend or whatever, put $40 million in some sort of a revenue account, and I could just live $2 million a year off that for the rest of my life. These things could happen.
If we write them down, they might.
And we could talk about them, then maybe it happens. So that's the difference. One's got help, the other just does the work themselves. But they're both delusional.
Wild, wild. Razorback on Hogville asks, this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier in the show. When does practice start? Football practice?
Let me look. I think it's August 5th. Is that right?
Yeah, August 5th is right.
That is, by my accounting, and I assume he's talking about football. He didn't say football.
He didn't say, well, I assumed it was football.
So we're assuming it's football. August 5th, and that is 25 days from now. That's less than a month. Can you wait for it? Can you wait for it?
No, I can't. It's like
Pretty
the season's
exciting.
like 56 days
And
or
here's
something.
the thing.
50.
Everybody knows could be a national championship this year.
There could be if we
I
write it.
read that.
I might have read
KJ
it too.
Jefferson, man, you might win it all.
You might win a Heisman.
Yeah.
I've also read that, you know.
We could do this. We could talk about this for the next month or the next 25
Mike,
days.
you kill me. Mike, you kill me. Moving on. Hopefully that answers your question, Razorback. Bump Graves, sorry, I couldn't read that. I got that right? Bump Graves wants to know any word on how Barry Jr. is doing at Illinois. Bielema was always about his two tight ends, run offense at Arkansas. That's not what Lunny did at UTSA the last 2 years. Seems like an odd fit.
You know, I read a little bit about this, and it looks like what Barry's done is kind of combined what he likes to do with a little bit of Bielema, and he's calling it the Tempro offense, T-E-M-P-R-O. It would be tempo, but with more pro style in it, which is really two tight ends and line up and try to run over people. And if you read the way they describe this offense, it's really a lot like what happens here with Kendall Briles. You're really trying to create distractions, something to take a defender's eye, make a defender look here when he should be looking here, and then all of a sudden the defense breaks down. So it all sounds good. Most of the article talked about how the players had really bought into Barry, and he's great, man. He's the ultimate players coach in that I rarely see him ever screaming at players. He was here for several years as a tight ends coach. I didn't see him out there yelling at anybody. Here's what he did. If you screwed up, you didn't play, and he let you know that. Why are you here? Are you here to come out here and sweat and work hard every day just to sit on the bench? Or do you want to play? Well, if you want to play, you can't do it that way. And that's a great motivation.
Yeah.
A lot better to me than cussing and yelling at a guy and calling him names or whatever. So he's a player's coach. The players like him. Now, does this mean this translates into Illinois suddenly gets really good in the Big Ten and dominates or whatever? Well, if they were like the Aggies, they could just say they would.
They might win a national championship,
maybe
Mike.
they would. But he's got a job ahead of him. It's tough. Why did he go there? Because he wants to be a head coach. And if he does turn them around somewhat and they become relevant in the Big Ten, he's going to get him a head coaching job. And his ultimate goal, I believe, is to be the head coach here when Sam Pittman leaves. Can he do that? Stay tuned. Maybe. So
That'd be really
Razorback fans need to keep an eye on this guy and see what happens at Illinois. It could be good for Arkansas in the future.
For sure, for sure. Alex for Hogs 88 says, I've got a Mike down memory lane question for you this week. We always love these ones. What factors do you believe played what factors do you believe played a factor in Houston Nutt's hiring in December of 1997? I've done some basic research, but would love to hear your input.
The first basic factor was that John White, who hadn't been chancellor of the school for very long at that point, when he came in, and Nolan, I've talked to Nolan about this because he had a meeting with John White and said there was no question that John White, when he came in, was out to minimize Frank Broyles, to take his power away from him and kind of put him in a box where he thought the athletic director should be. Always before, Frank fired a coach, Frank hired the next coach. Well, he fires Danny Ford, but he gets told by John White, the school chancellor, okay, we're going to have a hiring committee. You'll be on the committee, but we're going to put some ex-players on there, and you have to listen to what they say too, and we'll hire based on what the committee thinks. Well, I knew Frank pretty well. He didn't tell me this, but I think his attitude was, yeah, right, okay, I'm going to go find the guy I want. Let this committee play over here and interview people and figure out what they want to do, and I'm going to go do what I'm going to do. And he wanted Tom Tuberville. Tom Tuberville had been at Ole Miss. He was originally from Arkansas. Frank thought, hey, I can get him to come back here. And he had done well at Ole Miss. I think the allure for Frank was that Tuberville had recruited in the SEC. He had coached in the SEC. He's a guy that knew what he was doing. So I'm going to go after him. So arranges to have, because Tuberville, I think, on initial contact said, look, I can't let this get out. If you talk to me and you don't end up hiring me, that could go bad for me at Ole Miss. So I don't want this getting out. So they agreed to meet in New York City the week of the Heisman, because a lot of coaches go up there the week of the Heisman ceremonies. And from what I was told, they're in the same hotel. One of them's in a floor above the other one. So Frank just goes out of his room, gets on an elevator, goes up, knocks on the door. He goes in, they're having a conversation. Okay. So they have sort of agreed in principle, okay, I'll take the job. And this has been so long ago. I think it was for $500,000 a year. That sounds stupid now, but back then that was a big amount of money. $500,000 a year. And okay, so he goes back, but the thing he tells Frank is, I'm not going to appear before some committee, because while all this is going on, the committee is bringing in different coaches, and Houston Nutt was one of the coaches that they brought in, and they really liked him. And Tuberville said, I'm not coming up there and meet in front of a committee, because that makes it look like I should go to you and interview for a job. If you want me, hire me. Otherwise, don't hire me. But I'm not coming up and interviewing for a job, because I don't need it that bad. Well, Frank says, oh, look, I'll figure out a way to deal with that. I'm not sure what I'll do, but we can get around this. We may have you meet with them in secret, and it won't mean really anything, because if I tell them I want you to be hired, they're not going to tell me no. I was the coach of most of those guys, and the others know me as the AD, and they're not going to turn me down. So he's trying to figure out what he's going to do. Tuberville goes back home. Somehow the word gets out among the boosters. And I knew a guy that knew a lot of Ole Miss boosters, and he told me flat out, they are not going to let Tom Tuberville come to Arkansas. It would be too embarrassing for them to lose their coach to you. So they're going to keep offering him more money. So they initially offered him $750,000. He calls Frank up and says, yeah, I know I agreed to $500,000, but these guys that's a lot of money to turn down. So if you could at least match the offer, then I'll still come. Well, Frank's getting wind of this too. And he understands what's going on, and he goes, this could be a never-ending thing. I offer him this, he gets more from them, I have to offer him more, this could get out of control. So Frank just went, no, I'm not doing that. And so he doesn't call Tuberville back. And Tuberville's now nervous because he really wants to come to Arkansas, and he eventually called him back and said, hey, I'll come. I just wondered if I could get more money. By that time, Nutt had already gone to the committee and said, yeah, hire Houston, or Nutt. Frank had gone to the committee and said, hire Houston Nutt, and that's how he got hired.
Wow.
Long story, right?
That was a long story, but a good one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. And finally, our last question is from Arky 1967. I'm sorry. Please tell the new lady on Big Trail Nation to quit waving her hands around so much when she speaks. Drives me crazy.
I wonder who that would be.
I don't know. Who is that, Mike? Who's the new lady?
I'm going to defend you a little bit.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice.
Because you're the daughter of a basketball coach, Nobody waves their arms around more than basketball coaches, and then referees are out there doing it.
Have you seen my dad? He's like,
yeah, so you grew up watching people do all this stuff, so it's just natural, right?
yeah.
Okay, so we at least understand why you do it. Now,
Yeah.
how do we kind of curb that a little bit? Well, I thought there's a couple of ways. We
Okay.
can put like a metal bar underneath this table,
Okay.
and then handcuff your hands to
Oh.
and you just have to sit here.
Oh, nice.
But
Okay.
that would be probably
we
be
could
over
just
the top. So
it
how
could
about
work.
some weighted wristbands that when you try to raise your arms, you're kind of aware, hey, that's heavy.
Yeah.
And then it triggers something in your head, and you say, well, I shouldn't wave my arms around as much.
That would work too. Do you
Yeah.
have this contraption already
Well,
made for me?
I could go to our boss and probably say, hey, we don't want to make these viewers mad.
Hey,
so
listen.
we've got to eliminate this hand
Archie
movement.
1967. I don't want to make him mad anymore, so I will.
Here's the
I will.
thing.
I'm conscious.
When I first got started in this business, I had consultants tell me, you don't use your hands enough.
Really?
Yeah, so I was the opposite. They wanted me to
just
do
did this?
more. So I try to do that now. I'm trying to use my hands more, and
Oh,
you're
I think
using.
I think you use them just enough. I think you use them great. So, but anyways, I'm conscious of it. I will make sure to do better next week. All right.
Keep an eye on
Keep
you.
an eye on it. They're down on the desk, all right? That's all the time we have for this week's Ask Mike. Join us next Monday for more answering of your questions. See you then.